Thank you for this interview, and I'm just gonna go with the questions.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Yeah, a question I like to ask every performer is like, what does acting means to them? So, what does it mean to you? And was it like becoming like a performer or like being in that sector, like one of your objective? And maybe what pushed you or made you want to follow one of these paths, for example?
Ooh.
Yeah.
These are all okay. This is great. I love this. Um, you hear a lot of actors say this, and I used to like be like, oh, yeah, always very drawn to the storytelling aspect of it. I loved fairy tales as a kid. I grew up on all these Disney movies. And I was just talking to my dad last night about like what I look for in TV shows and movies that I like. And I like these character driven um stories that are not necessarily drama, but I like seeing a character grow over the course of a film or a series, um, because I feel like that is what we're put on Earth to do, is to learn and grow as people and identify, our own path and our own place in the universe, and exploring to like me as a person. um every role I do, every project I work on, teaches me something else about myself. And I don't think I realized when I was a kid, like looking at, like, yeah, I want to do theater, I want to be an actor. I don't think I realized that that was the impact it was going to have on me. I think part of me just wanted to, like, I want to be famous. Like, I don't want to do the work, I just want to be famous. And that went away pretty quick. I The joy that I find in acting and in the storytelling is this exploration of humanity and personality and identity. And um I have found over the years that there are a lot of people walking around, grown adults with lives and careers, and that scares me. And so I think that's a lot of, like, I don't like, I want to know who I am, and I want to build on that person and be a better person than I was yesterday, 2 weeks ago. Um, and getting to play around in these other people's heads as an actor, I have found fun and exciting and educational, for me as a person. It's become very, very personally fulfilling to be part of this, storytelling community as an actor. And exploring my own identity through that. And the bonus is, if other people get to be there and watch and enjoy it and like it, like, that's cool too. But finding that joy for myself, exciting part of being an actor, like, that is what it has come to mean to me, more than just the I want to entertain folks, which I do like it. But it's become much more internally focused in my head and in my heart about um this exploration of self, even if it's not myself. Yeah, that was a messy answer.
No, it's clear. It's great. What I also like to ask is, if you could select, for example, like five best memorable moments, or like just not the best, but just some five memorable moments in your career, like in your life so far, which one will it be?
um
If it's
Gosh, it's very difficult not to start with the most impactful moment of my career. Was one of the most critical moments of my career was before my career started. I was a senior in high school. I was about to graduate. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. Like, I got angry when my parents were like, "So have you been thinking about a major?" And I'm like, "No, shut up." Um, but I went to see a play because my dad had read about it in the paper. Um, it was a two-person show that starred anime actor Chuck Huber, who I grew up, and that it was a play called Tally's Folly by Lanford Wilson. at Theater 3 in Uptown Dallas, directed by Jeffrey Schmidt. I remember every second of that play like I saw it yesterday, and this was 13 years ago now. I can read that play and I'm like, yeah, and then this is where this happened, and he did this, and then she said this, and this is what the set looked like, and this is what the lights did, and then the music came up. That was the moment. I walked into that theater not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, and 97 minutes later, I walked out of that theater saying, I have to be an actor. Like, this is it. I found it. And it was the genuine raw humanity that I got to see on that stage that day that really, it just reached right into my. I went to see, I don't think he would remember this, but I went to see the play a second time on closing. It was their final performance, I think, and I caught Chuck in the lobby, and I said, I told him this. I was like, I'm about to graduate. I don't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I came to see this show, and now I have to, like, this is what I have to do. This is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. This is who I want to become. And I always go back to that moment. Like, if I get beaten down or jaded or bummed out about something too much, I'll pull that play off of my shelf and like flip through it and be like, yeah, I have to remind myself of what prompted me to do this in the first place. And that gets the ego and get, the storytelling and the humanity, and reminds me why I do what I do. That's certainly the most impactful moment for me just over the years, and it has continued to be that. I got to work at that same theater like a year later, with a lot of those same people. Chuck was in the play, Aaron Roberts was in the play, Austin Tyndall was in the play. It was directed by Jeffrey Schmidt, who I just adore, and that was the number two. Like, that solidified everything, and I was like, yep, okay, I was right. This is what I'm doing forever. Let's see. Ooh, okay. Yeah, I like this. I like going chronologically. In 2016, I had graduated college with my theater stage man, auditioning for stuff all over the place. And I was thinking about moving to Chicago. Chicago is a huge theater town. And there was a Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago has a training program that's like a few months long, and you have to apply to it like you're applying to college. You got to write essays, you need references, like send in your headshot and your resume, and then if we like you enough, we'll invite you to audition. And I made it to that in-person audition, and it wasn't for another few months that they were gonna send out the acceptance letters or rejections. And my plan was, if I was accepted, I was going to move to Chicago for the summer and then just never come back. And that was going to be it for me. I found that was opening night of the first play I was starring in locally. I'm like, this is fine. This is great. So what? Like, I'll build the life here. Like, I'm doing it. I'm proving to myself that I can do it actively. And so sometimes I wonder what the trajectory of my life would have been if I had moved to Chicago, but like, I'm very grateful right now that I didn't, because that then led to working in anime and like my current career and my exploration as a writer. So anime was the next big stepping stone. That really, it blindsided me because I was just going to do theater forever. But I found this audition for Funimation, and I was like, yeah, I grew up watching anime. Like, I'm an actor. Like, let's go give that a shot. And I was the thing is, I'm kind of still a shy adult. And I was afraid of like really going for it in, auditions and like make it, because I'm terrified of being laughed at. Like, I'm terrified of being made fun of. And I am afraid of doing things that might prompt that if I don't intend it to be funny. But walking into my first audition, my first anime audition, I was like, forget all that. I'm gonna go ham. I'm gonna go whole hog. I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go nuts, and I'm gonna see what comes of it. And slowly I started to pick up more and more parts. And I think when I got called in, this will be what, number 4 of my 5 big moments. Mike McFarland called me in for a hour or yoga, and we just spent 2 hours working on the show. And when he released me, he goes, "Well, yeah, this part is yours if you want it." I'm like, "What do you mean if I want it? Of course I want it. Yes, I want it. Give it." And having one of my first major projects in anime be a character who is so opposite of me, and getting to work with Mike, who is already obviously a very seasoned director and very adept at guiding new talent, that was incredibly empowering as an actor, and gave me a much better base from which my kind of anime vocal profile. And that's been nonstop now since 2017, which has been fantastic. And gosh, number 5 of the killer moments in my career. Let's see. I guess it would be when I started writing, when I started doing adaptive writing. And that was only 2019. That was one of those things where it was like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I would be good enough. I don't know how. I'm scared to try it. And I had 6 or 8 people just be like, "You're good. Like, you've had enough time in the booth as an actor. You know, your timing is great. You know how these things are supposed to sound. You've got a background, you know, not only in performing, but watching anime. Like, give it a shot and see how you do." It's like I am very, I have a puzzle brain. I do not consider myself a creative writer by any stretch, but I like adaptive writing because of the puzzle that it is to make sure everything fits and flows and sounds good. And I always describe it as a kind of like a verbal Sudoku puzzle. Where, you know, you can't have these 2 phrases too close together because it sounds weird or stiff, and you got to make sure everything fits just right. It's I find that very empowering and very exciting to do and work on. Burnout be damned. It's like I think about the adaptive writing part of it often, a lot. Like when I'm watching other anime, I've caught myself performance sometimes. And that has been a really fun and interesting thing for me to discover that I like to do. It's very fulfilling. And I've, you know, all of these things being said, I feel very lucky that I've had a fairly well-rounded career in the arts thus far. So yeah.
That's so interesting. That's so great. You have mentioned during this that you grew up watching anime and also theater and also I think I read somewhat video games. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any like anime or video games, music, fandom, or like all of them, or like one from each that has like shaped the one you are now, or like
Pokemon. Pokemon. It's Pokemon. 100%. And I was 5, 6 years old when, you know, that blew up in the United States, and I've been a lifelong Pokemon fan. Here's my red cap. Like it's
Oh yeah.
And finding out that, like, hey, your main character is a little boy played by an adult woman, I was like, whoa, that rules. Veronica Taylor
Mm.
is incredible. And I don't know if I've ever told her this, but because I've only spoken to her like once or twice, but just knowing as a kid that there was somebody out there like, you know, like me, there's a woman at kind of brain time watching that anime. But looking back, I'm like, I was in awe of you and of how this story got put together in the anime with these actors, and I would say, yeah, the video games as well. I've played almost every single one of them. Skipped a couple of the like mainline generations, but gosh, and that's from childhood, I guess. But I was just telling a friend this yesterday. Video games tend to find me when I need them the most. The three most impactful video games of my lifetime have been Undertale, Life is Strange, and Disco Elysium. And each of those had a message that totally altered the way I think, not only about video games, but about myself. And again, it's that exploration of identity and the power of those video games where you get to embody those characters and make those choices for them, where it's not necessarily predetermined what's going to happen. So fulfilling, and that has been a really wonderful lens for me to examine myself through, mirrored roundabout kind of way. All three of those games at some point broke me down into absolute tears, and then helped me build back up and exploring this other character's identity through these choices has really given me so much more to go off of. Part of that being fandoms and discussing those characters in depth has been really, really amazing and very, very fun and very beneficial to me. I don't talk about this a lot, but I am on the Mushoku Tensei subreddit. I read everything. And I've posted in there a few times just to discuss. I don't identify myself as having worked on the dub, but I love those characters so much, and I'm interested in building up my understanding of their world by engaging and being a part of that fandom. It's very cool.
Yeah, so interesting. Did you have any like role models as yeah, growing up, like either like when you were like watching like a person, or like a role model that you have found while watching a particular video game series or like a theater play for which you resonated with?
I mentioned director Jeffrey Schmidt, director, actor, designer, Renaissance man Jeffrey Schmidt. He's a local. He's the artistic director of Theater 3 down here. I refer to him as my theater Yoda. Was so willing to mentor me from such a young age, like, just helping out and working on his plays and things. And the things that I learned just from him, just by watching him work, I could fill a book. When I was to be you when I grow up, like, I want to do everything. Like, you do everything and you're good at everything and you're kind and you're fun to work with, and like I love that. Like, I want to be you when I grow up. And he was like, set your standards higher, like, come on. But and still to this day, like, I'm very, like, in the back of my brain somewhere, like, concerned about like making him proud. And my former acting coach as well, Gregory Lush, was almost not willing to let me pay him for the private acting coaching that we did for a very long time. Because he's a friend. And I love him dearly. And again, he has spent so much one-on-one time with me that I didn't know existed. As a performer. I should tell him that. I should call him. But the things that he taught me and the time that he spent with me, and just getting to see him work, he is somebody that I look up to very, very much. And again, very much want to make him proud. These guys as artists are incredible, and as people they're even better. And if I can be a 10th of the human being that either one of them are, I will die happy. I love those guys. I do need to call them. I'll text them later.
Cool. I want also to ask, like, from the characters you have portrayed, or you have like been adapting the dub to, or like performing on stage, is there like any character that you feel could be a good role model, like from them? Maybe which one then? Or maybe one of them that has like, oh, I mean, if you find like yourself and you like driven characters and driven stories and identity and stuff, is there like any one of them that has been that has teach you something somehow, or like helped you in some way, if it does make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, a fun thing about adaptive writing is finding unexpected places where my life and my experience are immediately applicable at hand. Artist places. Like I did not expect when I was adapting a Salt Lily Bouquet early in the pandemic that was going to be as emotionally draining for me as it wound up being, just by writing it. There's a scene where one character is having a panic attack and another character is trying to talk her down, and I have been both of them on both sides of that situation. And getting to process those parts of my life directly through these anime scenes has been very cathartic and helps me release a lot of this tension and a lot of this energy that I've been holding on to, that I don't necessarily know I'm holding on to. And I would not call him a role. Yes, Gray Rat has probably been the single most impactful role of my life thus far. And that I also got to process a lot of that through the writing. But I think he is a very, very good example of nobody's perfect. Some people are terrible, and even the people that you think are beyond redemption and beyond help are not. I think there is so much power in the story, in Rudius's journey in Mushoku Tensei, in discovering like, I'm a terrible person. I've done terrible things to people. I need to do better. Because and it's true. So many people are blind to, and I mean, this is true of myself as well. Like, we are blind to our own flaws in many, many instances. And the power in understanding your own flaws cannot be underestimated. It is the first step. It's identifying like, these are the issues that I have and these are the things that I would like to improve or improve upon. And there's something so real about the way that Rudy accepts that reality for himself, even in this fantastical, magical world where he realizes, I need to learn to be more empathetic and more understanding. And the way that he takes that out into the world and tries to do good not only for himself but for the people around him is incredibly admirable. So whether or not, he's likable as a character, which oftentimes he is not, I think there is a lot of good that can be addressed through him and through his character. And I've been in therapy. I've been in regular therapy for several years. And I started therapy not too long before Mushoku Tensei started. And getting to stumble over these parts of this story that really hit me at my core, that character and that story really have unlocked a lot of things in my, own little emotional fortress inside, that I am grateful to have opened. Yeah. It's very difficult sometimes convincing people that like, no, this character, this absolute terrible human being of a character changed my life.
And the way you portrayed like his nuances, like it's just not black, it's not like black and white, there's more to it. And as he encounters more people, he discovered more things about himself, the world he lives in, and all of this. And as you have said, like the way he accepts that reality in which he lives and himself. And I love the way you portray that. It's amazing too.
Thank you very much. And yeah, like you said, like putting it as it's not black and white. Nothing is black and white. You're absolutely correct. That's a much more concise way to put it than my big ramble. But yeah, absolutely, 100%.
What has been somewhat like one of the biggest challenges that you have faced, if it's not too personal though, and maybe how did you overcome that challenge?
Ooh, this is a story I don't think I've ever told publicly. So I was a theater major in college. And I want to say halfway-ish through my sophomore year, I was effectively blacklisted from part for reasons that I can guess, but that still largely remain unknown to me. Like my friend, like I lost a lot of my friend group. My professors like deleted me on Facebook kind of things and like weren't willing to talk to me. Like I felt very undermined and I felt very abandoned by people who I had put, my trust in with my education and my emotional well-being. And finding out that these people who I thought were mentors were not was I found really damaging and very discouraging. And there was a very long period, of that part of my early adulthood where I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I should. Like maybe this is a sign to quit and give up. And I don't like anything else. I love this work too much to have given up. Again, I've gone through a lot of that and processed a lot of that era of my life, what my own shortcomings certainly were in those scenarios. And really, I guess, gosh, it's not a very good moral, but boy, yeah, I was just too stubborn to stop. And so I made my own fun. I didn't do a whole lot of college theater while I was a theater major in college. I went to class and did my homework, and then at night I would drive down to Dallas, back for professional theaters in Dallas, and that's how I learned really all of my practical skills. As a theater practitioner, as a designer, as an and as an actor, you do pick up things by osmosis, by watching people who know way more than you do their craft. Finding a community in the professional sphere when I was in that kind of pit of despair was very, very beneficial. I feel very lucky that I was able to kind of reclaim my identity as an artist through working with those people. I truly, yeah, that could have been it. Like there was a very precise moment in my life where I was like, I have to either turn left or right. And I've been looking this way for so long that it's very hard to stop. So I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna push through and see what happens. Wow, gross. I just hard work and perseverance. Stubbornness, pride, and spite. These are things that fuel me. Very, very, very blessed to have an incredibly supportive family. Who, when I said, my brother's an architect. He has a big boy job in an office that he wears slacks. And yeah, I'm just very that I had a family. When I was like, I want to be an actor, they went, okay, cool. Like, figure it out. Like, we don't know how you're gonna do that, but we'll help if we can. Yeah, it was finding that support network and having that stubbornness and having that I'll prove you all wrong cannot be that can't be discounted. That is a very strong motivator.
That's good. It's like your passion pushing you through, and that's good.
Yes, that's a nicer way to say it. Passion is so much nicer than the words that I used. If I ever need a ghostwriter for my autobiography, I'm gonna call you.
Use a lot of your voice, I guess. And so how do you take care of your voice after like a vocally like an intense session? Or do you have
Stop
a
talking.
particular way?
Just don't talk for a while. I have been quite lucky to not but I certainly have, and I just like last week I did an audition that I'm mistake of not warming up first, which huge mistake, very big mistake. Like that immediately I'm suddenly immediately reminded of the importance of warming up and making sure you are hydrated and limber and ready to go. Because I tore my throat up a little bit. It hurts, and that can cause permanent damage to your cords. So warming up, staying hydrated, but then after a session, not talking and staying hydrated for as long as you have to. Vocal rest is incredibly important. Also, whispering is apparently bad as normally as you can, because whispering is worse. I don't know why. I'm not a scientist. That's just what I have read and heard. I'm sure somebody can tell me why that is. But I definitely when I did the DLC for Borderlands, I had not done a lot of video game work before. And so the way that they sectioned out those sessions was I think I had 4 sessions. And we would do story dialogue for most of it, and then for like the last 30 minutes or so, we would do hardcore battle stuff. Put it right at the end of the session, so then if I blow my voice or I'm like, wow, that hurt, I'm done, like we can call it and not have wasted the whole session. For my band, all of this, dialogue, and then we switch over to the battle grid, and Joel's like, all right, now you're gonna be on fire for a long time. And that was rough. I remember I had a day job at the time, and I remember going into work the next morning, because I was like on a Thursday afternoon or something, and then Friday morning I went in and I was like, hey, so this is what I like today. I'm not gonna answer the phone today. Is that okay? And my boss was like, oh my God, like what did you do? I was like, I did a video game. And my boss at the time had previously done voiceover. She's been in a handful of anime over the years, which was cool. But she was like, yeah, just don't sit down. I'm gonna make you hang on, I'm gonna make you some tea. Like so it just advocating for yourself is incredibly crucial at mental health. If you, I mean, you can go all day long and then say, yeah, I'll just drink water and not talk for 4 days. But if you hurt your voice in the middle of a session and don't speak up and they keep pushing you, you're causing yourself more damage. Like vocal health starts before you open your mouth. Like there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like it is so important to be willing to or to be able to identify like when you have like when you go, oh, that was a little too far, uh-oh, like that was too much, like I gotta take a break, I gotta sit down, or even like we have to call the rest of the session. Like that is, I think that's a part of vocal care that people don't talk enough about. Hey, actors, if you're doing a vocally strenuous session and you hurt yourself and you say, hey, I just hurt myself, I need to stop, and the director tries to push you anyway, quit that project. It's not worth it. Save yourself. And then like call the producer and probably talk to them about it. I mean, that's, have an adult discussion with somebody about it. But yeah.
The anime session or like the anime season, like lots of things happening at the same time, like lots of things like release and stuff. How do you manage all of that? Because I guess that sometimes maybe it depends on the person, but like there's a lots of things. I guess I don't know. How do you take care of?
As
Sometimes I guess there are lots of things, like lots of release or lots of project to work on.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I guess.
Okay, yeah.
And how do you like? Because I just there's like lots of things, and maybe it may be like stressful. But how do you manage all of that with this things coming?
Personally, I manage it poorly. I get overwhelmed and stressed very easily, especially these days. Oh no, I'm a terrible person to ask. they're like, writing a show and trying to do this and like assistant directing here and picking up sessions left and right. I cannot overstate the importance of a robust calendar. I was never growing up, I never used my planner. Like my mom would buy me planners for school and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Well, how do you know what homework you have? And it's like, because I just remember it. It's not that hard. And then when you grow up and graduate and start doing jobs, it's like, yeah, I need to take care of this, that, and the other, plus housework, plus my taxes, plus, and. So I've embraced the calendar. I have 5 or 6 different calendars that I have to book out for. Here's all of my appointments, doctor's appointments, haircuts, dentist appointments, all of that stuff. Like I have to put it in there or I will forget. The trick really after that is making sure that I look at the calendar before I say yes to something else, because a lot of times I have agreed to a booking and then looked at my calendar and gone, oh no, I have overlap. Oops. And I am very bad with time management. I have terrible time blindness. I cannot estimate for the life of me how long something should actually take if left to my own devices. So keeping myself on track with lists, don't know where I would be without them. Yeah, I'm also working on a lot of I have a lot of resources for time management for like ADHD brains that's really helped a lot. And but it's an uphill battle. Like part of my job now has become scheduling and making these lists and making sure that I'm keeping up with everything, because I've definitely had, if a health issue comes up or something with my family comes up, things will immediately fall through the cracks. And get too far away from me to catch up with. And that doesn't feel great. It's a battle. But that also includes scheduling and building in time to take breaks. And that's something that I don't do, that I haven't done in a very long time. And that's bad for you. There is a lot to be said for genuinely letting yourself rest. And it's hard to rest if you've got the threat of these looming deadlines, so making sure that, I have blocked out myself for like from early to mid-December all the way through January. I'm not doing anything. I am taking my time. I'm working on other stuff. Like I'm not accepting new projects, during this time. I'll still like audition for stuff, but because I have spent so long going absolutely just balls to the wall nonstop, that it's been pretty detrimental both to me and my health and the work that I'm putting out. I mean, it's the you can't pour from an empty cup idiom. I gotta replenish myself before I have any more art to give out. Yeah. Not now though. That's my cat hanging out on my bed.
Beautiful cat.
Hey, buddy. She's asleep. She's very asleep.
She seems really cute.
I take a lot of cues from her on how to rest and relax. She's very good at it.
That's good. We should be like sometimes cat just to sleep or to relax.
I would trade places with her right now.
That's good.
Like, man, Opal, do you want to do my job? Do you want to write? No, she does not.
She want to sleep.
She's out.
Yeah, I also want to know, like, I guess, what is the difference, like, for you, or like in general, maybe, voice, because I guess that voicing a video game, like a live action or like an anime, is really different. So how is it different for like maybe in general or maybe for you, voicing that, and maybe how does your physicality, if it does change, how does it change for you?
Ooh.
Or whether
Between
like, but also maybe on stage, because I guess
yeah,
it's really different from like.
between anime and video games for me. Anime, more of the blanks are already filled in for you. Because the show's done. It's been produced, it's been written, it's been produced, it's been animated, it's done. Like all of that work is right there. We are providing an alternate language track in a lot of cases for anime. In most cases, almost all. And so all of your blanks of, character motivation and tone and timing and expression, those are all things that have been done for you. All you need to do is take your words and slot them into those things. But that can be a very easy there's a trap under there where you start to get lazy, where you're like, oh, these things are done, I don't think about them. You still have to take all of those things into consideration for your performance, because if you go, I can just talk like this and my character's face will do the rest for me. No. It's you're given all of the tools, but it's not like it's like getting IKEA furniture versus having to go to Home Depot to God, I'm terrible at metaphors. It's you have the pieces put together for you right there, but you still have to put them together. With video games, I talked about how I've spoken a lot about how Borderlands was an incredibly creatively fulfilling process for me. Because the character's not done. She's barely been animated so far. And we're making edits to the script kind of on the fly. And originally, like when I came in for that character, she was not funny. She was not going to be funny. She was just angry, a big buff angry lady, and with a lot of trauma trying to do the right thing. And I found that really compelling. But we found places to slot the funny in, which I think every human being on this earth is funny, whether they think they are or not, and whether they intend to be or not. But being able to just describing a character as being funny gives you an idea going into the session, but being able to create a person in Juno and then find what her sense of humor would sound like, which is this dry wit, kind of sarcastic, type of humor. It was very fun to develop. And it was a team effort. That was me, it was Joel, it was the writing team, it was everybody in the room being like, I think this would be fun. And I think this would serve this moment a little bit more. And getting to build on that is wonderful. It's very cool. On stage, if you're doing a new play, you get kind of that creative input. If you're doing, again, like a lot of the legwork has been done for you, you still have to identify, your underlying motivations and things. But you've got your point A to point B. And you've got to find how to get there. Physicality wise, the only thing that changes for me in a booth is the fact that I'm not allowed to turn my head because the microphone's in front of you. And that, I don't like that, because there's so much, like, I used to take videos of myself in my room doing certain character voices that I've done in anime, so I can see where I comes from. Like all of Hyoka, I think I recorded standing on my toes. Because she was a very light, airy, just nice little girl. She's sweet. And I recorded a lot of that on my toes. Magical Girl Raising Project, Fob, I like pulled my neck in really far a lot of the time. There's just strange there are these things that you got to figure out. You do have to channel your body into your voice. And really the only thing, like, there's so much power in being able to like whip your head around on stage that I miss desperately in the booth. And I have not quite figured out how to fake that part of it yet. How to channel what that feeling is about with this act. But I do use my whole body in front of the mic. If I had a nickel for every time I accidentally like hit something, they're like, we got a weird noise. It sounded like you hit the mic stand or something. We got to come in for that again. I'm like, but it felt so good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't understand how there are people in the world who like get in front of a mic and do this entire vocal performance stock still. I don't get it. I can't do it. I flail. If I'm doing anime and my character's doing something on screen, I will also do that thing. Again, Mushuku Tensei is a great example. There's an early episode where Roxy teaches him this, big cool stuff, and he's like doing all this cool stuff, and I'm in the booth like a Muppet. It's like, woo! Because you can hear movement in a voice. You can hear when your body, does something that a body naturally does. And it's, yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't know if it did.
Yeah, it does. It does, yes. You have mentioned before with like the writing part, like the adapting part. That is like a puzzle for you, mixing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How generally is it like is your day organized when you need to adapt it, and what do you pay attention to when you adapt a particular script for an anime or like whatever?
Gosh. I will always watch the show for fun first. I'll watch the episode to see the story beats and the emotional beats. Because if something affects me as a viewer, the first time out of the gate, I need to make sure that what I write has the same impact. I need to make sure that it flows, it is easily understandable. And I think also a big part of the reason that I have found success in doing this is that I have issues with auditory learning. I was saying issues makes it sound like I am not a good auditory learner. I need visual aid. When I watch the episode and then sit down to write it, I will go line by line and then, watch the cue, watch the whole cue, see what it says, and then I will strip it down to its barest function, which is flaps and words. And I will make absolutely sure as often as I can that the sentence being said out loud is easy to understand, especially if it goes by quick. If it's not supposed to be easy to understand, like in the case of like weird sci-fi technical jargon, I will do my best to find ways around it. Or like I will, there have certainly been cases where I will try to insert text some from a different line. Like I'll just scoop context out of one spot and fold it into a line so I then have room to elaborate. I don't know. It makes me feel satisfied as then a reader of the script. And it is very, very important to me in that process to make sure that if information is going by, you get every word of it. There were instances in Assault Lily, which was that turned into a show about the ethics of cloning. And so there was a lot of, weird kind of technical jargon there. There was research for Millionaire Detective, and making sure that I understood what, what they were saying before I tried to then also explain it. What was it? Oh gosh, I had another example. Where'd it go? This is Salt Lily, Millionaire Detective. Azure Lane. Azure Lane was crazy. I adapted episodes 11 and 12. It was the first thing I did when the pandemic shut everything down. They were like, I mean, we need these done. Would you like them? I said, yeah. That show didn't have much of an overarching plot until the very end. And I found out through lots of research that the story that they went with was based on that ran for like several months in Japan only, like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was looking at like blogs and fan wikis and like Reddit, and I'm like scouring, trying to find, any scrap of information that I could to make sure that I understood precisely what was happening in the anime, because it was very confusing. And I didn't want at any point to give up and just be like, I don't know, it's confusing in Japanese, so it's going to be confusing in English too. If it's confusing to me in Japanese, I want to make absolutely sure that I get it before I try to adapt it. And I think not doing so is an insult to your audience. Because there is so much that is lost in translation. Japanese is a very flowery metaphoric language. And I think there are ways that certain things are phrased that if you try to translate them so it fits in 2 lines at the bottom of the screen, you're going to lose some of that broader context. There have been instances where I'm like, I feel like this translation is missing something, but I don't know what. And I will take my phone and I will turn on dictation and I'll hold it up to the speaker and let it speak Japanese into my notes app. And then I will like go through, a dictionary and look up, I'll go through a Japanese dictionary and try to look up and be like, could also mean this thing, but it could also mean that, which blah, 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 blah. Beastars had a lot of that. There were some translations in Beastars where I was like, this works one of 3 ways. They're all very good and very valid, but which one did you mean? Because that's the one I want to keep. And woof. It's fun. It's fun. It's exciting. It's interesting. There's way more research involved than I think people tend to understand. At least if you're being thorough about it, I think. Which I think also contributes to the time blindness and going, yeah, I'll work on the script for an hour, and an hour later I've written 2 cues because I do. But yeah, I'll lock myself in my room and pop my headphones on and just stare at it until I get it. Yeah.
And since you have mentioned research, I was wondering also which of, not maybe these one, but others series that you have been adapted, you have made like lots of. I mean, many of them you have done research, but which of them have like you have learned or like appreciate what you have discovered through that research? I mean, I guess does it make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Oh man, there's one show that I would love to talk about, but I don't think I'm allowed to yet.
Oh.
There's a perfect example of this that I would love to talk about, and I don't think I can. Shoot.
Next time.
Next time. Aw. Point being, it was very based very heavily in real world science. And I had to go through and make sure that this real world science that, again, I understood what was happening. It was extremely thorough, but they would show certain things on screen that I guess were more East, kind of like acronyms that if you live in Japan, you might recognize as this is a government organization. And then having to look through these things and do this research, and I pulled up like scientific papers that I had to like comb through to make sure I was talking about geographical regions correctly. And I walked away from that project with not only a much greater appreciation for what those people do in real life, but I was so in love with how accurate the anime portrayed these things. It I really wish I could talk to somebody and see if I'm allowed to. Am I allowed to talk about? It was fascinating. I didn't like, there was a part of me that thought it was just going to be, another little anime drama. I didn't think it was going to be so heavily scientific as it was. And watching it, I loved it. And then sitting down to write, I got to sit there and pick apart all of those, those little things and these truths and these terms, throw out these that you inherently know. And I thought that was a beautiful touch that they didn't explain a lot of those things, because this show did not treat its audience like they were stupid. Like they were like, you're coming with us, like get on the train, like figure it out on the fly, like these characters have to. It was very immersive. It was the scientific equivalent of, an immersive language program. You get in there and just be like, okay, I have to figure out what these things mean based on context clues. Hang on, let me go look this up real quick. It was fascinating, and I wound up reading a lot more about that kind of work than I had to, just because I started to find it really cool to read about.
From the series you have been adapting the script for, do you have any favorites one you have been?
Mushoku Tensei. It's way up there. I love it. I'm in love with it. It's perfect. And Other Side Picnic. Other Side Picnic was very fun to work on. I felt very lucky to get to do that. I realized very early into watching that show, because the first one that I picked up was like episode 4 or something, because the original writer Leah Clark was on a slew of like and to fill in a lot of those. But I very quickly, very early on in watching the show, I was like, oh, this lead Soro is me in a lot of ways. Like, I definitely do not have the kind of family history and trauma that she does. But the way that her trauma and her past manifested itself in her personality were all things that I found very, very similar to myself. And this she deals a lot with this idea of inadequacy. She deals with jealousy. She deals with loneliness. And she does it in a very recursive way. Want to say out loud what these things are that she is dealing with. But I identified very, very heavily with those themes and with her dealing of them. I could see a lot of myself in her. And I felt very grateful that I could bring those parts of myself to her journey, and that my growth could help become her growth. And vice versa. I really appreciated that she is. I mean, like, I loved watching her open up, and I loved getting to watch her blossom into a more confident human being. And because we don't always necessarily identify our own progress as people. And so while I know that I am not that exact person anymore, it still gave me hope that, like, yeah, I'm also still growing from this. I am also still learning from this. And that was really wonderful. And then I got to play her, which ruled. I got a text from Michelle Rojas, and I screamed and I threw my phone across the room.
But that's
But
an amazing performance too. It was a great
thank you.
scene.
Thank you. That was fun because I mean, that's just what I sound like in real life. This is what I sound like in real life. I don't have to like put on an anime voice. I can go fry at just droopy, sad, sounding voice. And that's just what it is. Yeah. Other side was really, really fun to work on. And also, again, a lot of research. Because a lot of those internet folk tales, like I love creepypasta, I love Slenderman stories, but these were all very specific to Japan, and they were stories that I'd never heard before. So that was fun to explore and, get interested in. Yeah. And then I think the later episodes of Mushoku Tensei towards the end of part 2, especially with regard to Rudy's relationship with his father, I found a lot of, also a little bit damaging. Like there were parts of that show that I was like, I'm afraid of this. Like I am scared to tackle this both as a writer and as an actor. I'm like, I don't know access this in a way that I think will still be true to this story. That was but getting to work through that was amazing, and working on those episodes with Emily Fajardo and with Jeremy Inman was I felt very comfortable in that situation, and getting to talk through these things with them was very, very nice.
The difference between these two, like the cultures, if it makes sense.
Yeah. Gosh. I definitely had the benefit of being an anime fan growing up. So, consuming a lot of Japanese media early on, that Pokemon Jelly Donut rice ball example is a big thing that comes up. But getting to read like Fruits Basket and Oron High School Host Club and these things that just deal with, fantastical elements based in a regular Japanese teenager life was really cool. That was very informative, and that has given me a huge leg up both as an actor and a writer. And what's tough is knowing now, what's tough nowadays is knowing when to lean more heavily into the Japanese culture, or when there is a joke that will be funnier with an American reference, kind of, because there is nothing less funny to me than like, here's a directly translated pun, and it's funny because in Japanese blah 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 means blah blah blah, and it's like, that you've made it unfunny. This is terrible now. It's not a joke anymore. And so coming up with a comparable English pun that may not have all the same words but gets the same point across is a fun needle to thread. I found myself getting in trouble with fans of a certain show once because of a joke that wound up in the dub that was given to me by the official translator of the show. The translator said, this is a pun with this pun. This might work good enough for the dub also. And I looked at it and I went, yeah, that's really funny. Like that's legitimately, like that's a good goof. And they used the same joke in the dub script and in the subtitles for the Japanese version. But I caught heat for changing the words from the original Japanese because they said ass in the Japanese, and because of censorship, I was not like, they just didn't want to, whatever. I don't know. It was ridiculous. It was an insane criticism. I'm good at taking criticism. Constructive criticism, bring it. That was a ridiculous thing to say. Like, you can't come at me for that as being a dub writer is censoring the show, and this is the discussion decided that this is the route to go. It's yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of odd, interesting cultural tidbits that that's another thing as well, that like having to borrow context from one, line, fold it into another to then elaborate later. Every now and then I'll run into a culture thing that I feel like is so specific that I need to explain it to the audience. But again, don't without treating them like they're stupid. So it's, I want it to be clear, and I want it to be within the fiction, within the conversation, I want it to be organic. And it gets easier, more you understand the culture. But the pitfall there is something may blow right by me that I'm like, yeah, everybody knows that this thing, when your average viewer is not going to know this specific, cultural element. So having to be cognizant of when those things come up and being able to identify them is an interesting challenge.
You have also adapted some LGBTQ series, which when you also have, I think, played in some of those. How is the experience in like working in that, like doing this, and what do you think is like the inclusion of that, like important to you, or like important in general, whether like the LGBT or like the different elements of it, or like inclusion of like Latino.
I love so much that this industry at large is embracing the fact that the most adept, generally, 99 times out of 100, the people who are going to be the most adept at telling certain stories are people from that background. I think conscious casting is a deeply important route that the industry is going down currently. It's great to see. And as a queer person getting to work on LGBT material, not only empowering but validating to my identity. I have a very long history of being very straight passing, and I do not talk very much about my queer identity because of that. I feel like I'm, not allowed to take up space, in certain LGBT circles, which has sucked and has been kind of lonely in a way. And so getting to work on things like Other Side, where I get to play in this space of joy. It's not, it's right there, it's on the page. This is the relationship that these two people have, and it's very validating, and it's very comforting to know that there are directors and producers who want to bring these experiences, these particular experiences of these actors into their art. And working on scripts for Given was the same way. I wrote a couple of monologues for that show that I do this a lot, and some fan out there is not gonna like that I'm admitting this out loud, but every now and then if I identify very wrongly, like what I mentioned about Assault Lily, where there's this scene where one girl's having a panic attack and the other one's trying to talk her down, and I said I've been on both sides of that. Both of those characters in that scene have dialogue that are things that I have either said to people or have had people say to me in those situations. Like that is directly pulled out of my life, note for note. And there are parts of Given that I adapted that have been pulled straight out of my life, note for note. And knowing that these parts of me serve the story being told is so empowering. And I feel more at home in my identity. And I'm so incredibly grateful that that I have had those opportunities. And I look forward to doing it more, like I want more lesbians, please.
Yes, let's go. That's good.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because it adds really really like real to the story. Like you feel like it's real in a way. You feel like even more connected
There are
to it.
definitely, yeah, it's easier to access like those feelings if you're, if you know where they come from. And that is because that's a part of my that I've spent time on, and getting like being able to walk into a situation where I go, I know exactly what this is and what this feels like. That's amazing. And I've had that on a lot of projects, but to get to do that from an LGBT perspective is far more uncommon for me. And it feels amazing every time I get that opportunity. It's a lot of fun. I like it. Even if the content is sad, I'd still walk away from it being like, gosh. No.
One of the questions I liked also to ask, I don't know why, every performance, like if they have to like take a certain accent or like a language in for example, I do know that for example like in Mushuku Tensei, they have like particular a specific language, and then like how did you like adapt like what was your experience doing that? But also for like Asia Lane, I think you did like a British accent. Or something like
I've been English for anime before. I've been French for anime before.
cool.
Uh,
Is there like any other like accent that you would like to like adopt or like to like develop? Or is it...
I used to think that I had a really good ear for dialects, and as I grew up and started to like learn dialects more officially, I found out that I don't. I have a good ear for like 2 dialects, and that's it. I have 2 that I developed, so I'm like, yeah, I'm great at this because confirmation bias. I have worked with dialect coaches before to learn Scottish and Irish and Dutch and German, and none of them stick. It's a muscle. It's like working out. Like you gotta practice to make sure it's in your bones. Because dialects live in different places in the mouth. And it's very fun to do. It's very fun to do. It feels great when something finally clicks or when something sounds really good. You're like, oh yeah, that was smooth. Nice. In the case of the fake languages from Mushoku Tensei, which there's another one coming up. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but those are based on existing languages. This is information from Japan. They are all of these, each of these fake languages is based on a certain dialect of a certain language that is then basically just jumbled together and then laid back out flat. So the beast god language has a lot of Creole and French influence. And so adapting that and recording these like guide tracks, je parle un petit peu de français. Alors, ma grand-mère est français. Alors, into full names for French sounds, and I did a lot of ZH, I did a lot of zhuzhing in like the Beast God language, and I went harder probably as a writer than, you know, a lot of the actors who were going to speak these languages. They were like, I'm gonna do the best I can. It's like, yeah, we only have about 45 seconds and then we got to move on to the next thing, kind of, you know. So I did want to set them up as well as I could with the guide tracks and pronunciation, you know, guides and all sorts of things. Which was very fun to play in, and the fact, and also getting to play around with that and knowing that it's fake and we're not gonna grossly offend anybody by getting something wrong. I've seen a lot of fans get very picky about dialects in anime, and it's like, I know, I know. A lot of us are doing our best. I know. It's challenging. It is incredibly challenging, and it one thing that I didn't expect, like doing Azure Lane, I think that was the first time I'd done dialect for an anime. I didn't realize how much it was going to change the timing of things, and that's when I learned, like, if you know a character is going to have a dialect, you need to write the script with that in mind, because certain sounds are just going to take longer to say in another dialect than if you're, you know, using this standard Middle America sound. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. I wanted to know, how was the experience voice in Hyuka? Hyuka, I can't pronounce it, sorry. La Hyuka, because that series is really interesting, but I feel like few people do talk about it. Anyway, but what was the experience for you voicing it?
I like I mentioned earlier, I had just blown an audition for another show. I decided that, like, I really wanted it and I was really going to go for it, and I like watched a bunch of the show beforehand, and then I went in and I blew it, and it was bad. It was a bad audition. That was for Clifford Chapin. It was a bad audition, and I left being like, well, I'm not going to book that. And the next day, I get a text that says, Mike would like to bring you in for a paid audition for Hyoka. I was like, okay. And I'm like, I immediately learned my lesson, and I'm like, I'm gonna go in cold and blind. And that was my second major role in anime. And it was not a simuldub. It was before the full switch to this broadcast weekly format. So we had a stockpile of scripts that we got to do in batches, and there would be weeks where I was working on Hyoka where I would go up to the studio for 4 or 5 hours a day and just live inside of it all week. And it was a very much a baptism by fire kind of situation, because I was like, I'm still very new to anime at this point. And like I said, Mike is extremely adept at guiding newer anime talent towards where he wants them to be. It was incredible to work with and very patient with me. He made me sound great. It was relaxing. Like, I don't know if before or since I have had a project that it was like it was like going to the spa. It was like taking a long nap or a hot bath. Like it was just, I left those sessions fulfilled and refreshed and comforted and appreciated. And we had fun doing it. I learned, that's where I learned a lot of what I know about anime, about how to do anime, was on that show. As a, like, why people do it better, really. And my other castmates in that show are unbelievable in their roles. Dallas Reed as Satoshi is perfect. And I remember telling them as much. We hadn't met until that show wrapped. But we talked on Twitter a lot about just like, oh, I just recorded episode such and such. Ah, you sound amazing. Like, oh, I love when you get to record before me, because then I get to hear you and it's fun. And there was just such a sense of camaraderie, where even if we didn't, among this project, where even if we didn't like hang out, especially Adam, because he's from Houston, but it felt like going home, getting to walk into the show. And it's calm, it's beautiful. I made my parents watch it. And it is one of my favorite projects to have worked on to this day, and certainly one of the most important, I would say, for my life and my career.
It's nice. One of the series you have, like, it's a short one that you have voiced the characters from, is she and her cat. I really like that series too, and I wanted to know what was the experience for you voicing that characters, because it's Chucky's.
So Brittany Lotta, our director, texted me, I think before it was finalized, they were, and said, this project might be happening, and if it is, I want this to be you. I was like, that's very nice of you. Why? And then she sent me a picture of this character who looked like me, with my haircut at the time and her big fat black cat. And I'm like, all right, well, she looks like me and that's my haircut, and here's my big fat black cat that I just invited into my life recently. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was, we did the whole thing in 2 sessions, with a big gap in the middle, because I got bronchitis right in the middle, lost my voice for a long time. But this idea of this young lady with dealing with, again, loneliness and depression and not knowing what her place is, was very identifiable to me. I'm like, yeah, girl, I know what that's like. I've been there. And it is, that character, Miyu, in that film, is probably the most like me of any character I've ever played. Down to the haircut and the cat, like, that's the kid. It was very fun to work on. We had Brittany kept a notepad next to her desk while we were recording, to make a tally of how many times we were. I cried a lot in the booth. Matt Shipman cried a lot. Matt and I especially are very weepy people. But it was a pure delight, and I bought a DVD copy of that movie to give to my former boss, who I still held that job at the time, because I was like, hey, this is like a 30-minute short film that I would like to share with you. Like, you're an important person in my life, my boss who I love and work for. And like she and her husband like took it with them on vacation to like their lake house, and they're like, we're watching your thing. And then she texted me later and she was like, why did you make us watch this? It's so sad. We're crying. Thanks for checking it out. I have not forced my parents to watch it yet. I have not forced my brother to watch it, but I will. I will. That is a very, very special project to me. And intensely grateful that Brittany saw this character and recognized me in her. Like, I still stunned, still aghast and agog and agape that she dunked that nothing but net. Like, it was a perfect project for me. And I feel like that's an egotistical thing to say, but like that's she's me. And again, talking about this, getting to speak your truth and your experience through the lens of these characters is so powerful and so cathartic. And it can help you grow past a lot of those, those issues and those struggles. It's great.
How was your experience with in Kaguya-sama?
So much fun. I go ahead, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say it's really, we felt the fun and it's great. She's a really interesting character too, and it's really funny.
I love Kaguya. I read the manga, so they started dubbing it, and I found out that it was getting a dub, and I reached out to the talent coordinator, and I've done this a few times where, like, if there's a show coming up, I will reach out to the woman at the studio who schedules everybody and everything, and so I said, hey, I saw that you're doing this, this is getting done, I would, like, if you can, would you mind please passing on to whoever the director is that I would love to be considered? I would love to either audition or be considered if they're not holding auditions, but I am very interested, actively interested in this project. And a lot of people are very open to hearing that. And Morgan Loré was especially. And she and I had not worked together very much at that point. And well, most of the show is already cast. But we'll need, like, I think they needed final approval from Japan on the cast. Like, they had to send all the, like, voice samples and auditions and everything. So Japan got the final say. And I was sitting there like, oh gosh, like, oh no, everybody's gone. Like, I can't, oh no, I'm not gonna get to, oh no. When I read the manga, my favorite character was Chika. And then after I started playing Miko became my favorite character by far. And then reading the manga to its end, like, she still is. That was with Morgan, with her even more on comedy. She is very much from the louder, faster, funnier school of directing, and she crammed as much insanity into that show as she possibly could, and made it just an absolute ball for every single one of us to work on. It was a delight. And to, like, look at the cast, I think I said early on, I like looking at me next to these, these actors who everybody else in this cast, Alexis, Austin, Aaron, and of course Jade. Like, I was like, I'm like, am I allowed to be in this room? Like, dang, all right. it was just one laughs. I just wish that Miko got more screen time in these seasons, but it was a delight. And gosh, I would love to do the OVA. I hope we get to do the movie. I want 6 more seasons of this show, like adapt the whole thing. Yeah, Miko is very, very special to me. And I appreciate her backstory and her eventual love story very much. I like watching her grow. She and I do not have similar struggles like I have with some of my other characters, but I identify her struggles and appreciate her path. I think she is just she's a beautiful human being to watch flourish. See her through your delight. Endlessly honored that I get to be her English voice.
It's cool. So nice. I don't think we'll have time. So then this is the end of my questions. So thank you very much for
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for continuing to reach out when I forget to check my email.
No problems. No problems.